Just let me know when to start. I'll start. Thank you, sir. Okay. So let me know this is the screen sharing. Okay. Uh, fine. So it's visible, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. So today we have the topic for this session is experiential learning. So the theme of this particular faculty development program is to have innovative teaching and learning pedagogy. So when we talks about this innovative teaching and learning, so we basically focused on something new, something extraordinary that we can deliver to our students, or that something extra that we can deliver to our participants and wherever we are going for to deliver our session. So the basic purpose is not to have something innovative, but the mixture of the objective is something innovative with the proper ability to convey to the target audience, right? So that our target audience should able to understand what exactly we are trying to convey, right? So this is what it's called innovative teaching and learning pedagogy. So there are a lot many teaching and learning pedagogy is already available, and we are day to day basis we are also make it our routine teaching learning. And many of the teaching and learning pedagogy, you have already seen it in this particular faculty development program arranged by Research Foundation of India, right? And we constantly keep doing these practices to, enhance your knowledge capacity, and so that you can enhance your capability in terms of making your teaching and learning process more effective. And more students should get convinced with the efforts that you are having it, through which you can make your delivery more effective, and through which you can grow in your professional career, right? So this is what the objective of Research Foundation of India in all the time. And with that consideration, today the topic for the discussion is experiential learning. So we have to see one by one everything in a flow, that what is experiential learning, why people are doing some experimentations in their teaching learning process. Because if I'm not recalling, or if I'm not running any sort of slides in this particular presentation, then simply speaking in a layman language, when we talks about the experiential learning, so experiential learning means we try to break the monotonous window that keeps in our mind, right? We have to break that window. We should not restrict ourselves to the old concept, but we need to learn something new, something extraordinary which is going on into the market, and we need to put this practice into our own practice. Then only we can be with the market, and through which we can provide some edge in terms of the session that we are delivering, the content that we are delivering to our students, and through which the convincing of the message that we try to deliver to our students is going to increase, right? And that's why it is said that experiential learning is one of the most effective teaching learning process. So with that note, I'll start my presentation. Okay. So the flow of presentation for this particular session is, firstly, we will try to understand what is the meaning of experiential learning, right? So we have seen already the basic blueprint of the experiential learning, but we will try to understand in detail what is the actual meaning of experiential learning, and how experiential learning comes into the picture, and why people are focusing more on this experiential learning. Second point, that in this particular presentation we'll try to discuss who has given this particular theory, who is the backbone for this particular experiential learning process, right? And with that consideration, the person and the author has also tried to convince why the people are more focusing on the experiential learning, right? So this is the second point of the discussion for the today's session. Then the third point that we are going to discuss is the different stages of experiential learning that we have to keep in the mind. right? How the gradual process will start of experiential learning, right? It is not that it is not monotonous process, but it's a scientific process that we have to go on one by one, and we have to implement those practices into the actual practice manner by considering various aspects. And that's why there are different parameters at every different intervals of the teaching and learning process. And this stages needs to be, given importance, give the respect in the experiential learning to convey your message effectively and efficiently. Right. So this is what the different stages of experiential learning. And the fourth point in this presentation that we are going to see is the different sort of the methods which has been proposed and utilized as a part of the experiential learning, right? So when we are making our teaching and learning process, so experiential learning is not restricted up to one particular method, that and no one particular method can claim that I am the part of the experiential learning, because experiential comes from the innovations, experiments that we keep doing in our day-to-day work, routine, and practices. Here we are gathered to discuss the teaching and learning pedagogy in terms of the innovativeness. So innovatives always comes from the experiments, and we always have to do the experiment into our classroom teaching learning process. How to make it effective, how to make learner centric, through which the learners will increase their acceptance power, and through which the message that we want to pass on to the students or the target audience will be clearly communicated, and through which the acceptance of the mentors, the faculties should get increased in the minds of the students, in the minds of the mentees. So this is why we need to adopt this kind of practices called experiential learning, and through which we can gain the confidence, the trust, the respect from the target audience, that is nothing but the students in the universities and academic institutes. Right. So with that note, let me start with the first, the meaning of experiential learning. So when we talks about the experiential learning, so we need to recall it. There was one Chinese proverb, right, that has been given by the one author. He told that you tell me anything as a part of discussion, and there might be a possibility that I will forget that things. Means whatever we are delivering to our students into the classroom, right? And if this discussion is going to be the one-way traffic, right? One-way communication, that means we have prepared some content for the classroom delivery, and we just try to, deliver those contents to the students irrespective of making an efforts whether they have understood those particular concept or not. So this kind of classroom teaching and learning process will not work out to be on a longer period of time, right? It will be criticized by the students if the second mentor or the second faculty members will have something edge into his or her lectures. So they will easily differentiate between you and the other faculties. Right. So here is the point is that you have to create an edge in the minds of students by having effective classroom teaching and learning delivery process. Right. So if you only have the one-way communication skills, like if you are just delivering the content, irrespective of whether they have understood or not, there might be possibility that more than half of the students will not understand what you have delivered. But at the same time, if you try to change your approach slightly, little bit, right? So when we are talking about to change your approach, to change your concept little bit, means we just try to see to it that you show me the content, right? You show me the demonstration of the topic or the content that you are trying to convey. There might be possibility that I may remember that my particular faculty has done this particular experiment into the classroom. That means when the person or the faculties is trying to convey the concept by showing the live demonstration of the things that we have to understand, there might be possible that I may remember this content. Means the chances of remembering those concept is going to be increased drastically. Means I may remember all those activities which is happening during this experimental time, during this process, right? So I might not be remembering what is, what I can say is cognitive biases, what is behavioral biases. But if the same content will be delivered to the students by making them understand the live content, the live demonstration, live experiment in their teaching learning process, so it is the possibility that they might remember those experiments as a part of the learning, and they can easily relate those learnings with the concept, right? But again, it is not for long time. It is more than short time period of time, and less than a long short period of time to get remember. But now the question is, what is the rule mantra to that students will remember the concept for a long period of time with the greatest understanding in their minds? So the simple answer to this question is, if you involve them into the process, right? So the second line says that you do the process and they will observe the process. That is, you show me and I may remember, means the faculty is showing the process and student is observing. But apart from doing this practice, let's make it more concentrative, more effective, and more practical, and let the students to involve in the same process which we are doing it, and let them understand how this process is happening and what are the changes that they have noticed during this process. And this kind of involvement of the students into the teaching learning process will definitely increase their understanding power, and there might be the possibility that once you are involved in the process by yourself, you will never forget this particular process. That is always be stored in your, what I can say is, in the minds, right? It will always getting stored as a part of understanding in the subconscious mind. It will not, your mind is not allow you to forget this particular things. That is the power of involvement of the students into the practical scenario. And that's why it has been said that as a part of experiential learning, you try to involve the students into the things. You'd make them forced to get involved themselves into the practical exposures, do the practical things, observe the process, observe the results, and report it to the findings. That is called the experiential learning, right? So this is what it's. So only classroom teaching and learning process is an old concept. Even students are not liking in this today's scenario of artificial intelligence, where you are just reading the books and nothing more extraordinary that you are trying to portray to the students, even as a part of the practical examples in terms of case studies and all this, right? So students is not interested in this. And beyond, before that, even if you are going to the classroom, you have to be very cautious enough in terms of the preparation of the content, because the days are gone when students are only listening to you, but they have the various instrument in their hands to cross check what you are trying to say, right? So you have to be very cautious enough to while delivering to these things. And when the generation has been transferred to artificial intelligence, it is our responsibility to transfer ourselves, and our delivery of the content should also get transferred as per the current scenario, that is artificial intelligence, right? And we should not restrict the students to use the artificial intelligence, but rather, being a faculty, we must adopt such kind of changes as a part of artificial intelligence, right? And okay, so what is the message? But with that consideration, what is the message from the National Education Policy 2020? Right. So the government of India has proposed the new education policy for the 2020, and this policy is also supporting that the teaching and learning process should be experimental, right? Where the focus should be on the holistic development of the students with the integrated approach of all the teaching and learning pedagogy that we have to utilize. And that's why it has been said that whenever we talks about the education policy, the pedagogy that must evolve to make education more. And out of this, what are the factors that national education policy is focusing upon? So the first factor that is given more priority in the national education policy 2020 is the learning should be experiential. Without experiment, without making understand the students about the live and practical scenario, students would not be able to grasp the content in a manner they have to. because if I'll make you understand the audio theory, and if I'll make you understand the visual theory, then there is a difference between audio theories and audio visual theories, right? Because the picture which is going on in the audio visual theories is having the greatest and deepest impact in the minds of students or the audience who are watching it, right? In comparison to the person who is only listening those stories on the red FM or radios or podcast, right? So that makes a sense, that makes a difference, that it should be experimentation, experiential. That means the visualization effect should be in front of the students so that they can correlate the practical results that they have received with the theoretical content that we have delivered to in the classroom. So that is what it is called experiential. That means it is a holistic development. Holistic means it's a 360-degree development of the students, not in terms of only in one particular topic, but they should consider this topic on all the front, whether it is on the science background, whether it is from the commercial front, whether it is from the political front. So students should able to understand all the concept on different fronts, because when they are working into the market, they have to take into consideration all the front views of the topic that they have to consider, right? So holistic blueprints, holistic mindset of the students is must, and it is a responsibility of the faculty to develop this holistic development of the students, right? And this holistic development would be possible with the integrated approach. So what is the meaning of integrated approach? When we talks about the integrated, so integrated means it should be integrated with all the other pedagogy, all the tools that we have to utilize, right? So this is called integrated approach, right? So we have to integrate all the tools and technologies together, and then we have to deliver the content, right? So when we talks about integrated approach, integrated means we should not say that I should only utilize the textbook that I have it, and I should not consider the other parameters as a part of the tools and techniques for my study, right? So it should be integrated means whatever concept which is given into textbook, and you try to correlate those concepts in a practical exposures by utilizing various tools and techniques to make it more interesting and innovative, right? So this is called integrated approach. Inquiry driven, so that is called two-way communication when the classroom teaching is going on, right? So only one way communication should not be entertained while the session is going on, right? But you try to involve the students into the discussion point, take their views, opinions, and ask them if they have any queries, right? So that's how you will be able to understand their understanding level, problems that they have faced, and what else they are knowing on this particular topic. So even in this particular process, you are not just trying to improve the knowledge of the students, but in this process you are also trying to improve your knowledge, what the student is having and what you don't have it, right? So even sometimes you also came to know and the learnings from the students point of view also, from the student side also. So that should be inquiry driven, right? Then the next is the discovery oriented. What discovery oriented means? It should be some innovative, it should be some question mark things. You put the question mark in the process, give the assignment to the students that you try to evolve this concept, you try to solve this particular problem, and let the world to know what is the probable solution of this particular problem, right? So when we talks about experiential learning, so this is one of the important part, that you put the exclamatory question mark on the particular statement and let the students to think and identify the gap, identify the problems, and try to make them force to solve this particular problem, right? And that is what we are also doing in research also. So when the gap is identified in a particular manner, the acceptance and the chances of getting accepting your paper in the journals are getting high, right? So this is what it's called, the discovery oriented learnings. Then next point is it should be learner centered. When we talks about learner center means it should takes into consideration the market requirements and the topic that you have to deliver, right? Means you should be ready with all the necessary tools and techniques that is applicable in your particular classroom, because whatever you are teaching to your students, please try to understand that you are making them industry ready products, And when we are saying that we are making students to be the industry ready, that means we must try to cover all those parameters which are required for the industry ready, right? We should not leave out any such parameters with our own self and selfishness, right? So we should not make compromise in the delivery of the content, and to make it those content into the more attractive, more understanding, and more user friendly, so that the students would be able to catch it and they can apply for the future aspect, right? So, and future aspect, when I'm saying that, means whenever they are sitting for the placement, right? So the learning should be lifelong, so that the answer should always comes whenever they have to face the interviews in the future aspect, and through which the employability of the candidates gets increased with this innovative teaching learning practices that has been followed in every universities and the academic institute of, in India. And that is what we have to make it more, discussion based learning. So discussion means, one of the discussion method is to have group discussion, case study that you can give it to them, right? So if you give them, if you want to solve any particular, if you want to teach any particular concept, and if you have the, collection of the case studies on the different topics, so try to give them some times to read it, and then ask for the valuable suggestions and the problems that has been faced in this particular case. Ask for the valuable suggestions, so you will have definitely the greatest possible solution from the students. And when the students are making such practices, they are, you are making them to, aware about the current scenario, current situation, and current problems and current solutions that could be derived, and through which you are forcing them to reach at the market requirements. So this is what it's called, the discussion based learning as per the National Education Policy 2020. The learning should be flexible. So when I'm saying learning should be flexible, means if I recall my time, right? So earlier we regret to use the mobile phones in the classroom, but I think today is a time where the teaching learning process is not possible without the mobile phone. Although it is a different case when your lecture is going on and the student is not utilizing mobile, but if at all student is not able to understand what you have delivered in the classroom, and if they want to search it out, and if they want to clarify their doubts, right? So they have many tools, right, that could be clarified their doubts, like, they can utilize the dictionary, they can utilize chat gpt, many AI tools are there through which they can solve their doubt within a fraction of seconds. And when this is a need of an hour, so you cannot stop to your students, to utilize such kind of tools and techniques, right? So this is what it's called, discussion based teaching learning process, and through which we can make it flexible, so that we should allow such kind of tools and techniques to our students, so that they can make that delivery more comfortable and they can understand the concept in a more precise and comfortable, right? So we have to create the classroom environment to be on more flexible side, so that the students can enjoy it throughout the session, and through which we have to take the valuable suggestion as well, right? So this is called enjoyable. So when the combo pack of all such practices for the classroom teaching learning pedagogy is going to be followed, definitely the teaching and learning should be more enjoyable, and students will have more fruitful learning as a part of the concept, or the specialization that they have to adopt for the future placement, for the future employment, for the future employability part. So when I'm saying that the employment and employability, so employability means that the growing aspect, the growth of this particular candidate, the growth of the employees, right? So growth of the employees will always comes when the foundation, the base has been created in a such a manner, so that the students will have the employability more and more in a coming time period by applying his practical exposures, right? So this employability will not only comes from the theoretical ground, but this should always comes from the theoretical plus the practical exposures that the students have grasped, right? So the learning should be more enjoyable, more effective, right, and more precise and fruitful. That is called the enjoyable learning, right? So we have to create this particular things also. Okay. So now we are trying to understand what is the experimental learning according to you, right? So now we are switching over to the meaning of the experiential learning, right? So the meaning is, the first is, if even if at all you are not doing anything, make sure that this particular learning will have the active participations, right? So make sure that the teacher and students are having the active participation in the teaching learning process. It should not be one way communication, as I mentioned, but the suggestions, feedbacks, answers should always comes from the students. It creates that you are not allowing students to go on a passive mode, but you are forcing them to be on active mode, right? So that students are connected with what you are trying to teach them, and they are not distracted from the session or concept that you are trying to portray and trying to convince them during the session, right? So the learning should be more fruitful and the students understanding will be higher side, and that's why we must need to ensure that the active participation of all the students should be ensured, right? So this is active participation. Then next is, it also takes into consideration the reflections. Reflection is a psychological parameter that every faculty needs to possess, right? So what is this reflection means? The response that you are receiving from the students. And when we I'm saying that the response that you are receiving from the students, you always needs to ensure, you always needs to monitor the confidence level that you have noticed in the student's mindset. Once you have delivered your concept and you are having a Q&A session, that is a question answer round, and during this part, or even during the session, if the students have certain doubts or something to share, you always notice the confidence level that students have possessed after your session or during your session. That says the reflections. And reflection says that, are you going on the right track or are you going on the wrong track? If you're going on the right track, every students are focusing on the concept that you are teaching, and they are trying to ask you the query one by one in a disciplined manner. But on the contrary, you must notice, if you fail to convey, if you fail to deliver your sessions in a fruitful manner, then nobody is interested in your discussion. Rather, students will try to distract others by making nuisance in the classroom, right? So this is what we being a faculty needs to understand. And to avoid such kind of practices, as a part of experiential learning, you take this experience from the first session and try to make an improvement in the second next session, right? So that your delivery should be more sharpened and the acceptance among the students will also get increased, right? Then second, third is, it should be based on the problem based. Problem based means you should not have the only the content delivery in the classroom, but you always put a question mark on the main topic and try to force the students to solve this particular problems, through which the students can develop managerial and administrative skills, scientific lookout, critical thinking power abilities among them, and managerial skills and talents which is required. And most importantly, if this is a group based assignments, so students will learn one of the most important things, that is the teamwork, that is the team efforts, right? Because they have to work in the company, and working company is not working on individual basis, where the individual goals are not going to matter, right? So we have to teach them that individual goals is not matters, but here the group collaboration, the collaborative efforts among the groups is going to be matter, right? So that is what we have to teach them, that how to solve the problem in the groups by taking into opinion of each other, and how to respect the opinions of others if they are on the higher note side of yours, right? So on the same side, you also have to accept the others opinions as well. This is called the acceptance power and respecting each other's opinion, and that is called the collaborative efforts, right? So when experiential learnings we talks about, so experiment always comes from the collaborations, right? So we have heard about it from one of the scientists or one of the psychologists, I don't remember, but he told one sentence that the different minds can bring a wonders, right? So what one minds can do it and what 100 minds can do it, there is a lot difference in these countings, right? So it is non-countable, right? So the one minds can do the n number of wonders, and the 100 minds can do 100 n numbers of wonders, right? So When we are talking about this collaboration, collaborative efforts, so we have to work in a team, and that is what the teamwork we have to learn. Shared responsibilities, distribution of work, right? So these things needs to adopt. Even students will also identify their own potential areas, even if they have to go into corporate and they have to pick up their profile for the job, right? So by doing this kind of practices, they will also identify where they are good enough, right? And this kind of practices will make them industry ready product. That is what the main crux of this presentation, how to make students to be industry ready. So we have to make them forced to learn this collaborative efforts, right? So this is called the consideration of collaboration. And most importantly, if we are doing all these practices, then ultimately I can conclude that we are forcing our students to do the things by learning, right? Or learning by doing, right? We are learning those things by not only what others are saying, but we are learning how the things are happening. So that is a difference between when the learning is only happening by what others are saying, and when the learnings are happening, what things are happening in this process, right? So this, the exposures, the outcome of the knowledge which has come out from the practical exposures is tremendous. And that is what it's called the main parameter of the experiential learning. And what is that is what the main message that experiential learning as a part of innovative teaching and learning pedagogy is communicating to us. And that's why there is one psychologist that is called Kolbs, and he has given one concept called experiential learning cycle. So he told he told it, and his cycle starts from here. That is called the reflective observation. So he has given this cycle, and he has given that is a reflective observation. So reflective observation means, right, and before this reflection observation, right, what you have to do is, first you have to start an experiment, right? You have to start the things, you have to learn the things, whatever your faculty has taught to you, students has to do it, have to experiment, and with this experiment, they will get an experience, right? So student has to act and do the things, and with this experiment they have to get the outcomes in terms of the experience that they have received out of this particular process. So we make the students to do the things in a practical scenario and notify the results that they have received as a part of their experience, because this will store in their mind for a life period of time, right? And with this, they have the reflections of the observations, right? So once you are going through the first time observation, you have certain things in your hands as a part of the backup of the knowledge, right? So whenever you are trying for the second time, at least you will try to overcome with those hurdles which you have already faced in the first experiment, right? So there would be a edge or sharpen efforts that has been come out when we talks about the reflective observations, right? So we, in this case, we look back and assess, right? So whenever we are going for the second time by having the experiment experience for the first time, we always try to see that what was the mistakes that we have committed and what was the plus point that was noticed during this process, and we'll try to avoid the negative aspects, and we'll try to catch up all the positive aspects that we have noticed, and we'll try to assess, we try to evaluate, right? And we'll try to think what was the right part and what was the wrong part, right? So you can see this, what went well and what not well, right? So we'll try to catch those things which went well for us, and these things we will try to conceptualize in terms of the abstract. And when we talks about the abstract conceptualization, so it makes sense that of experience, right? So the person who is writing the abstract means he's if you recall our research paper, we use try to mention the abstract. So till the time we are having abstract, and we have attended many conferences, workshop, and they are trying to say that in the abstract you have to write this, or I have to write this, and write this. But psychologically, what abstract means? Abstract means the story which you have noticed. The author who have noticed the story, he's trying to conceptualize into the theoretical point of view, and before writing this theory, he's just trying to give the blueprint of the overall experience that he has received or she has received. during this process, right? So this is why it is called make sense of experience, and based on that you will try to draw the conclusions, right? So even in abstract we are also writing the findings of the study. So this is what it's called, we try to draw the conclusion out of this experience. And the fourth point is, once you try to abstractalize the concept, you will try to have the active experimentations. Means this is called, in research there is one concept called confirmatory factor analysis. Whatever things which you have explored during your multiple experiments, and finally you have reached to the conclusion in the particular experiment, and now you are trying these particular parameters, right? Because you have already tried what went well and what not went well, right? So you already have those parameters which went well in particular scenario of the classroom teaching. Now you are trying those parameters only to apply on the different scenario of, let's say you are going for computer labs, or else you are going for other universities, or else you are going for other stream to teach particular concept of management, or something like that. And now you are trying to experiment those good things which you have noticed in the management students, and now you are going to teach those good things with those good notes to the science students, and you want to check whether these good things which went well for the management student as a part of experiential learning as innovative teaching learning pedagogy is completely applicable to the science students, right? This is called active experimentation. It is not like that the particular things which went well in particular situation is also going to be well in another situation, right? So first time when you are experimenting something, this is called exploration. And once the exploration has been done, you are trying to confirm that the same exploration which I have done it in particular situation is completely applicable to the another part of the situation or not. So here you are trying to confirm those good parameters which you have already noticed in one of the target audience, right? So let's say if I'm teaching in from the Baroda and I want to see that the same teaching learning pedagogy is applicable to the Indore, so the results might be different, but the difference level would be less. The difference level would be less once you have the parameters who are already tried and tested on some grounds, on some scientific grounds and parameters, right? So that makes a sense, and this will comes from the experience. This will comes from the experience. So right, when you are experienced teacher, you have to make this practice into your day-to-day habits, so that you can sharpen your skills, talents, and the knowledge which you have it, right? So this is how the people will start respecting you, and people will always come to you whenever they face any problems for the solutions. So this is what you can create an impression in the minds of people by the the crux of the knowledge that you have it, right? So this is called active experimentations. Okay, so now the cycle of experiential learning, how it is going to work. So this is the cycle of experiential learning. So when we are saying that experiential learning, so first you have to make a share, right? Being a faculty, you have to share your knowledge through the lectures or through the live practical observations, right? That is, and once you share it, what you need to do during this process, as I told you, sharing without taking an opinion is not possible, because you being a resource person, you need to observe the reactions and observations, right, that your target audience has received by asking the questions, right? Through which you will always came to know whether your delivery hit to the audience or it missed out to the main goal of the sessions, right? So this is what measuring the reactions and observations of the target audience through the sharing of knowledge. Once you have this, you have to analyze, right? So once you have shared and you have noticed that particular reactions and observation of the target audience, you try to analyze and evaluate the situations, what went wrong and what went right, as we have already discussed. So this is called the pattern analysis, right? You need to see to it if something is not well. So you have to think, you have to make an effort, what extra things or what things I have missed out, through which the things will not went well. So whenever you are going for the next time, you'll try to work on this negative parameters and always keep reserve your positive parameter. That is called the analysis, what is right and what is wrong for me. And once you have this inferences, right? And you once you make this practice into day-to-day life, right, definitely you will start applying the good things into your sessions, into your teaching learning process, and you try to avoid the negative aspect which you have already tried and tested. And once you have this, your delivery would be always hit to the target audience expectations. And this will be happens once the multiple activity is going to occur, and once your lecture should be well planned, and it should be learner centric. And this can be comes when you have this process in your mind, and when you are doing this process, you have been called yourself to be expert of the particular topic. That is called, that is from the experience, right? So this is called the cycles of the experiential learnings, right? So now we will quickly discuss the methods of the experimental learnings, right? So there are various methods through which you can make this practice into the day-to-day practices. You can take the students to the field trips on the live practical scenario. You have to make a narrative stories in a short manner. Conducting experiments, like if you are chemical background, so you can conduct some experiment. We will discuss later on. Simulations, games, storytelling, focused imagine, uh, you know, field observations, role playing, model building, and surveys. So these are the different practices through which you can force the students to have the experiment, to experience something, to record the observations of the students' feedback, reactions, and remodify the efforts that you have to make it, right? So these are the impact, and out of this practice, according to the nature and genre of the field in which you are, you can make it out the best practice that you can put out to the respective students. And I told you, the good practice in one particular stream of students would not be proven in other students, but definitely it could be an effective, but we are not guaranteed that it must be effective, right? But if something is tried and tested, definitely it will create some or other impact, not 100%, then
दीदी
70 to 80%, right? So that is what
ये
we need to
पानी
understand.
ये 2 चम्मच 2-3 चम्मच देना एलची
Okay, fine. So then after, the next topic is field trips. So simply you can see in the slides that you have to take your students to the practical locations for the concept or theory that you try to convince, and let them understand the practical process of the things which you are trying to convey, so that the understanding level, the understanding power would be more in comparison to the only theoretical knowledge in the classroom teaching, right? So this is called the field trips. So this is how they will understand how to behave with each other, how to have the different roles and responsibility. And lastly, you have to take the feedback, how was the field trip, so that the students have their own understanding and topics to be shared on the field itself, right? So this is very important and very effective teaching learning process as a part of experiential learning. Then narratives. So simply you have to become being an author, just like we are writing an abstract. So you have to make a short story, just like a climax in the movies, right? Which you have different characters, plots, and what is the findings and some conclusions, right? That will be come out through the careful observations and enhancement of the story, right? And based on that, you have to make an appropriate title, right? Just like a research paper, we are typing an abstract, and based on abstract, we will remodify the titles, right? So this is what we have the narratives. So narratives will also give a glimpse of the research and observations of the other authors and faculties, right? Through which you also can learn it by having the reading of this, or having the application of the practical things by taking out the important points of the lecture delivery through the narratives. Experiments. So this is basically happens in computer labs or chemical labs, where students will merge the different chemicals and try to merge together and try to evolve something new, experimentation, new products or something. So this is the trial and error process through which the students verify and establish some hypothesis, which we are doing in the research paper, right? Because we cannot say that which is applicable to this particular measurement will be applicable to the entire population. But yes, we can make an inferences that if it is happening to this much parameter, so if this parameter is belong to the higher population side, So it will be the same inferences which we have received the result from the sample size. So this is called experiments, which usually happens in computer labs and chemical labs. Simulation, so visual, audio-visual, and kinesthetic effects. As I told you, know, if you just tell me, I'll forget. You show me, I may remember, but if you allow me to do it, I may remember forever, right? So this is called kinesthetic. You touch and you do, right? So only visual effect will not create impression. Visual and speaking both will not also create 100% effect. But if I would be the part of the process by understanding through the role play, business simulation games, military simulations, where you forced to think about this particular scenario, then definitely it will increase my knowledge and understanding on the particular topic, right? So this is called the simulation process through the kinesthetic, right? So where you are the teacher of yourself, you are doing the process, you are doing the practice, you are being a part of the character, and you try to learn what observations that you have noticed during this particular process, right? So it will have life learning process, and this is a part of experiential learning. Gameplay, so different gameplays like business games and all such aspect, through which students have the enriching learnings, through which students can enhance their learning and teaching learning process, right? So this builds the skills and talents among the students. Storytelling, so you make a story, usually it applicable to the lower standard students where they don't have to do much experiment, but yes, you try to make them think in their subconscious mind and try to visualize the scenario that they have to understand, right? So this is what it's called, storytelling, right? And it depends upon the cultures and generation to generation, as I told. No, if you apply the same concept to the higher levels, higher grade students, so definitely they will lose the interest because they have already cleared this level, right? It is beyond their level, right? So you also need to understand, when you are making experiential learning tools and techniques, you also need to understand the objective of the particular teaching learning and the target audience, most importantly, which target audience are you making deal, right? So according to that, you have to apply these practices, and this comes only with the observation, analysis, and applications, right? So you must take care of such parameters. Focused imagine, right? So whatever concept that you have to learn, you have to force the students have to be forced to visualize through the meditations, right? You are forcing students to be the part of this character and try to visualize, if you are on this position, then what would be your possible efforts, what would be your possible reactions. So students will realize, students will understand that yes, this could be the best possible solution and this could be the best possible avoiding points, right? So this is how, through the focused imagine, you will get the positive and negative aspects of your learning, right? So this is called the focused imagine, right? You are making force to the students to visualize the scenario and take the probable solutions. Field observations, so you are giving some assignments to the students, to go into the field and see the and notice the observations of the people. Let's say if you are giving some assignment to the students to sell out certain products, right? So and you give them assignment to try to notice the reactions of the people when you are going for such events. So students will learn how the people get convinced and how the people are not get convinced. So they will able to develop the ability to convince the people by having multiple experiment. At the first instance they had just tried, then they have noticed that this was the problem, then in second instance they have tried to take care of this problem. So still they have not get the success, but still they have tried to overcome with many hurdles which they had in the first attempt, right? So students will learn through the observations, with their own experimentations, right? So this is called the field observations. Role playing, very important, right? So might be, if I being a faculty, I cannot understand the emotions and sentiments of the doctors or might be the lawyers, but if I have been forced to act and to play the role of the doctors and lawyers, then I have to behave like them, and with the arguments that I have been receiving from the patients or the clients, I would be in a better position understand the roles and responsibility of each of the characters that every student and in every genres that they have to play, right? So they will also learn the respect of each other's professions, and also they will understand what is their roles and responsibility if they are falling into this particular roles and responsibility and particular genre of working, right? So students will understand with the values and ethics that they have to show and that they have to demonstrate to the society and to the people with this kind of experiential learning, and very very important teaching learning process irrespective of the field and area in which you are. So role playing is very very important if it has been executed with appropriate and with good intentions, and very seriously if it has been executed. Very very important techniques. Model building. So this is mainly applicable to the engineers or construction sites where the site has been developed. So before that, some planning is required, right? So how to make this plannings if you are in particular area, if you are going from the space. So even if you have to go to the space, what are the precautions that aeronautics people has to take care while going into the space? So there are various trainings and various heat points needs to be highlighted before executed. So this is what it's called model building, right? So what happens if this happens and what happens if this not happens? So this is again a trial and error method, but what best practice we can evolve, that is the ultimate objective of the model building, right? So this is again, it's an experiential learning process. Survey, usually we are doing in our PhD and research paper, we ask the people to have their opinion on the particular topic, so that we'll come to know what exactly they are thinking about the delivery of the product or services that you have provided. Even in our university and academic institute, the faculty have been monitored and evaluated based on the students feedback, how the students has given a feedback or participants has given a feedback. Even if I'm taking the FDP today, you have been asked to give a feedback of the sessions, how the content delivery, how the session was, so based on the various parameters have been evaluated, and through which the efficiency of the lectures and the products can be maintained, right? So this is called the survey. Again, it is a part of experiential learning. So even the person who is taking the sessions can also utilize this particular results of the survey to see that where he is good and where is a need of improvement, right? So this is called the survey methods, which is applicable to the both the person who is delivering the content and the person who is receiving the content, right? So very very important techniques for the experiential learning. So this is what it's all about from my side. So last 5 minutes is there, so I'm making this session open for the question answer. If you have any questions, queries, you can ask me.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening, sir, please.
Sir, is this for only kids or for engineering students also? Because you told about the role play, judges, doctors. How can it be possible to apply for the engineering students and the two first year students who
So
came from school?
see, sir, case can be applicable to everywhere, right? Irrespective of the genre in which. And I already mentioned that you have to see that which target audience to whom you are representing. And this is also comes from the experiment, whether this particular techniques is applicable to the particular students or not. So at the initial level, if you want to start, you can try and experiment. But role play is applicable to everywhere, right? Even if you are not making into the live practical demonstration, but if at all, right, if you are constructing a site, so constructing a site is a different matter. But to construct the site, what are the particular people that you have to meet out? What are the probable queries? There are some internal people and there are some external people, how to deal with those people. So you can create a case study based on this, right? But practical, to construct a building is not a case study, and for that you have to have a model building. This is another method. But if you want to make your students to be on a perfect model, so every subject has a different modules. So if I'm saying that role playing, so role playing is a module of the construction site, how to understand the people mindset and how the different people will behave, external agencies. So you can create a scenario where the external agencies like government, corporation, dealers, suppliers, you can create a scenario and have a case study. And if you want to go into the technical aspect of the construction, so you make them forced to have the model building on with the some props, and you make them understand how the props are behaving, what centimeters or measurement you have to take. This is another case study. So I'm not saying that any one particular subject will have only one particular experiential learning method, but for every topic, every subject, you can have the different pedagogy to be implemented to make your session effective.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Next questions.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, please.
Thank you, sir, for the informative session. I
Thank
have
you.
one doubt, sir. Is there any difference between participative learning and experiential learning? What is the difference between these
See,
two?
participative learning means you are trying to portray what you know, right? And experiential learning means you are trying to gain from the experiment of others and your own experiment also,
Okay, sir.
right?
Sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other queries, participants?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please, madam.
So actually, as I'm a professor in IT department and at an engineering college, so
Okay.
my question is that how can I effectively implement this learning methods in programming education so that I can enhance the students'
Which programming you are
engagement?
dealing with?
I'm dealing with like the Python and the C++, all almost all programming languages.
Okay, I'm also dealing with that.
Uh,
uh,
okay, that's great, sir.
yeah. So see, programming language means basically we are dealing with the research aspect, right? So
Yes, sir.
right. So one parameter for the research is the survey or the data collection that you are doing it, right? Again, that understanding will always comes from the literature review that we are already doing it, right? So literature review will give you an idea which kind of variables you are talking about, right? Because when you are entering those data as a part of programming language by the codings, right? So at least you should have the idea that which data and which code should be taken as a part of the ultimate results. And to get this, at least you should have the experiment, at least you have the understanding of the different variables, right, to make you enter into this program and get the sufficient result. So at least you have to do the literature review. So even if you are not doing it, so at least you are having the observation methods. So observation means you are forcing your students to have a read, like a, case study. You have a case study, so try to have the case study and make the students to understand how this different scenario can behave in different situation, and you have the results from this programming, whether the p value is making significant or not, so you can have the conclusion on this parameter, right? But programming is one of the part of the any subject. Even I can do the programming for the management students also, and even I can do the programming for the science and technical students also. But the objective is going to be defined, the actual method that you have to utilize and the target audience which you have it.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Right?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, Jyoti Pathore have raised a query. Please, you can ask and you can unmute yourself. Any query, Jyoti Pathore, sir? Okay, I think he is no query. I think. So any other queries? If you have it, please. Okay, so thank you so much for patient listening. Thank you so much for making it again the active session. I hope this is going to be useful for you for the future reference. And thank you so much for the patient listening. And thank you so much, Saurabh Jain sir, Ajay sir, RFI, for giving me this platform. And thank you so much to the audience as well. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Over to you, sir. Shall I leave it? Okay, thank you.